Thank you so much, Nadine. So awesome to have you here sharing your gift with us again. What a beautiful prayer. Don't you go prayed up now? Yes. Clears out the chakras, but also everything I wanted to say. So it's great to see everyone again this morning. It is morning, isn't it? Yes. How many people here have a favorite comic strip? What is it? Let's see.
Calvin and Hobbes.
Calvin and Hobbes.
Peanuts.
Peanuts.
They're horrible. Archie's.
For the horrible. Archie comics. Yes. What was that, Ann? I want to hear yours for sure. Pickles. Okay. Anybody else?
Lil Abner.
Lil Abner. I like Lil Abner.
For better or worse.
Zits. Okay. My favorite are Matt Groening's, who created the Simpsons Life in Hell comic strips. You always have to bring a little humor by including somewhere in your consciousness the idea that life can sometimes be hell. Victoria Norgard was here at our last service. She turned 80 years young this morning. And she was walking up and she was radiant and shining and expressing the Spirit, but she also said, I woke up this morning, I looked in the mirror and I said to myself, what the hell happened? It's important to keep that awareness. My favorite comic strip includes the character Bongo Bunny, and he wakes up in the morning and he has X's over his eyes. And he eats his breakfast and he has X's over his eyes, and he drives to work and he has X's over his eyes, and he works and has X's over his eyes, and he drives home and has X's over his eyes. He eats dinner in front of the television set and he has X's over his eyes. He lays down to go to bed and his eyes are wide open. Does it even relate to this circumstance or scenario? It speaks to the human condition, both in how we can at times sleepwalk through our lives or provide ourselves with such mundaneness that we tend to feel that we're in a zombified stupor through things. But it also speaks to this idea that we can sometimes work against ourselves, denying ourselves rest. Sparing the idea that Bongo Bunny may have had some sort of sleep disorder, which is possible, but I'm going to assume that he's working against himself. And we do that to ourselves sometimes as well, don't we? I know every once in a while, from time to time, I'll be really tired and I'll lay down and I'll sleep for about an hour and then I'm awake. Sometimes it's because I'm in a state of regret about something I said or something so-and-so did. And it brings up those bad memories, and all of a sudden I'm remembering that piece of candy I stole when I'm 9, and it's all there. I put myself on trial at 1 in the morning. Anyone relate to that? Does that ever happen? More than likely what's going on is I'm anxietizing about something. I'm worried about something to come, the meeting that I have with so-and-so. What if my talk stinks? What if I get hit by a bus? Quiet down in there. I sometimes shout out loud. I'm trying to get some rest. There are those times where our mind and body aren't so much in harmony, and we work against ourselves instead of for ourselves. And you can especially tell, I can tell when I get up to get a drink of water and my body's so tired. Why can't I sleep? Or I finally do fall asleep and then the alarm goes off 30 minutes later and I can just sleep all day. Something's happened there. So what do we do? What's the cure?
Coffee.
Coffee at 1 in the morning. Oh wait, I get it. That's for the other hours of the day. I'm a little slow. We could take a sleeping pill. We could lead ourselves through kind of an imaginary vision. For me, it's often like a water slide that goes through the Amazon / Candyland that I can imagine in my mind. Do that kind of thing. I think just watching our breath can be a great way to kind of relax and calm down. My most surefire method is to pray. It's just to say a prayer. God, I know that you create miracles and that life is your miracle. I know that what you are is what peace is, what love is, what healing is. And since I know that you created everything that exists, I know that I am your creation too. So I accept your grace and your peace in my upcoming meeting with so-and-so. I accept and embody your forgiveness for the dumb thing that I did. I accept your grace in my rest right here, right now. Amen. And I don't always fall right to sleep, but at that point it really doesn't matter. Because what I realize when I do that is that I'm not really looking for a demonstration for my prayer, but the prayer itself is the demonstration. The prayer is the answer, because it's me finally getting to that state where I can come to a realization of the truth that I deep down in my heart believe, to release myself from the limited thinking, the regret, the worry, the anxiety that I'm utilizing to harm myself by keeping myself from getting the rest that I need. So the prayer isn't there to produce an answer. It is an answer in which I realize and do my best to embody a greater truth about who I am. Emerson said, "Prayer that craves a particular commodity, anything less than all good, is vicious. Prayer is the contemplation of the facts of life from the highest point of view. It is the soliloquy of a beholding and jubilant soul. It is the Spirit of God pronouncing his works good." And he goes on, "As soon as the man is at one with God, he will not beg. He will then see prayer in all action." Prayer, to me, is kind of like the highest possible way of thinking. Prayer, to me, is a way of thinking. It's a way of moving into the inner dimension of my being to discover and hopefully have revealed to me greater thoughts about what life is, who I am, and what that means for my life, because those things are true. Now, I have no problem with asking for anything in prayer. I think it's fine to ask for a bike or for more money or to feel better. But to me, this is a secondary use of prayer. And I even believe that prayers are answered. They're manifest in many ways. But to me, the demonstration I'm really looking for is in my own mind. The demonstration I'm really looking for is a validation of what life is a validation of who I am. Because I know that if I can live in the truth of who I am, that there is enough in that to provide and to demonstrate for me what is in alignment with my highest and best good. So when I pray for someone else, I don't pray for stuff for them, as great as stuff is. I pray to know that John is connected to the source of life itself, and because of that, he is a magnificent, miraculous being. He is a miracle of God. He is God's child. And for that very reason, he is imbibed with dignity, with courage, with confidence, and with love. I know of Janet, no matter what she tells me of how difficult the financial problem she is going through right now, is one with that absolute source of all the richness of life. And because this is true of her, I know that abundance and prosperity are her very birthright, and she needs only to continue to nurture her knowing of that within herself in her daily life. To know that demonstrations can happen all the time. When we know and embrace the truth of ourselves, the truth of everything else is revealed and will follow. Joel Goldsmith, a contemporary of Ernest Holmes, says, "Life would become a miracle of unceasing joy and immeasurable abundance, if only we could abide in the consciousness of this truth of His grace as our sufficiency in all things. When we recognize God as the source of all good, God is our sufficiency, and that people and circumstances are but the avenue or instrument of our supply, we are likely to have the experience of Moses with manna falling from the sky, or Elijah with ravens bringing food, finding cakes baked on the stones. Anything can happen, but one thing is certain to happen, and that is abundance." When the truth is the only certainty we have for our lives, that's actually a great gift. that's actually a good thing, but we've got to open up and develop ourselves to get an insight into what that is. If someone comes to me and they want prayer because their car's broken down and they can't afford to get it fixed, I hope their car gets better. I hope they get a new car. I hope a chauffeur shows up for them. But I'm not generally going to pray so much for that stuff because I don't know what should happen or what's best to happen. But what I know is that person is whole, that they're complete, that any idea that they have about themselves being less than or broken because the challenge that they're facing is a false idea. And I will hold that truth of their greatness with them until they can hold it with themselves, and then we can celebrate it together. That's the goal of our prayers for ourselves and for those whom we love who can't know it about themselves. And when I can't know it about myself, I start talking to you folks. I start asking you to help see it as the truth of who I am, as the truth of who I can be. Gandhi, perhaps one of the greatest demonstrators that prayer is a practical tool for bettering our own lives and the lives of those around us. He said, there are at least 2 clear times for prayer. We should turn our mind to the Lord immediately upon awakening in the morning and when closing our eyes for sleep in the evening. During the rest of the day, every man and woman who is spiritually awake will think of God when doing anything and do that with God as witness. Such persons will never do anything evil, and a time will come when they will think every thought with God as witness and as its master. Such persons who live constantly in the sight of God will every moment feel God dwelling in their hearts. We have only to turn our thoughts to God, no matter by what name we call God, by what method, and in what condition. All this being said, I do usually pray for stuff when I'm stressed, but my prayers are more for like the check to come, so that I can pay it and get on. They're more for so-and-so to not be late and show up on time. There's those little frustrations when I'm trying to rush things, when I'm not able to be present. The problem usually for me at night isn't that I'm not getting enough sleep, it's that I'm throwing a big sissy fit about it, right? You ever hear that? But the prayer, again, is the answer. And when I can let the waitress be and enjoy where I am by knowing the truth of who I am, something good is happening. What we believe in our philosophy is in a healing consciousness, is in a loving consciousness, is in a peaceful consciousness. It's up to us to realize this consciousness within our own consciousness, to utilize it to better ourselves and better our lives around us. Now there's a challenge that our generation faces today that I don't think they faced even 50 years ago. And it's this powerful belief out there that prayer is dumb. The idea that prayer is dumb. And it's promoted by some of the atheistic thinking that says it's kind of silly that you would pray and ask some God up there on a throne in the clouds to be some sort of genie to grant your wishes. From that point of view, it sounds pretty silly to me too. They'll say it's kind of silly to believe that life is some sort of battle between light and dark forces out there and also within yourself, and that you need to pray to somehow be redeemed or to be fixed or saved from those dark forces. And I think that doesn't sound very right to me either. But that's not what prayer is to us. What prayer is to we. And when I say we, I don't just mean religious scientists. I mean anyone of a mystical foundation who has studied or search this indwelling nature within themselves. They have discovered that prayer isn't about anything outside of us. It's about cultivating and discovering how to utilize and investigate this inner dimension within ourselves. We believe in an exterior reality that is ruled by certain laws and principles. We also believe that within our own thinking, within our own consciousness, there are principles and laws that abide, and that through listening, through receptivity, through spiritual surrender and willingness, we begin to allow to have revealed to us the deepest truths of who we are, hidden within us like a buried treasure. And yet when we realize it and discover it, we see it was all around us all the time already. The Catholic teacher Thomas Merton described it this way. He said, life can have an interior dimension of depth and awareness which is systematically blocked by our habitual way of life, all concentrated on externals. The poverty of a life fragmented and dispersed in things and built on a superficial idea of the self and its relation to what is outside and around it. Importance of freedom from the routines and illusions which keep us subject to things, dependent on what is outside us. The need to open up an inner freedom and vision, which is found in relatedness to something in us which we don't really know. This is not just the psychological unconscious. It is much more than that. Tilla called it the ground of our being. Traditionally, it is called God, but images and ideas of the deity do not comprehend it. What is it? The real inner life and freedom of man begin when this inner dimension opens up and man lives in communion with the unknown within him. Prayer is living in communion with that great unknown within ourselves, so that if we listen closely, it may reveal to us the mystery, the capital M mystery, of who we are. We see good in the world. We see, or I know I see evil in the world. But to me, evil is like a little barking dog at the doorstep of the monument of what is good. It's out there, but it doesn't need to be within ourselves. Just like we must come to realize the good within ourselves before we can really see it around us, we must dispel any notion that we are broken or bad or sinful in order to embrace peace and harmony in our relationships and in the world around us. Ernest Holmes teaches that we are not just individuals, but we are individualizations of the whole. That's big deal stuff. That's big macrocosm and the microcosm stuff. That's the idea that the wholeness that is true of all of life is true within the realm of our own consciousness, and we have to learn to use it if we want to experience it to a greater degree in our lives. There is one mental law in the universe, Holmes tells us, and where we use it, it becomes our law because we have individualized it. We all use the creative power of the universal mind every time we use our own mind. This is the mystical aspect of prayer, but it's important to recognize that there's a very practical aspect of prayer too, which states simply, I'd rather approach my life prayerfully than mindlessly. I'd rather approach myself prayerfully than with judgment. I'd rather respond to the incidents of my life prayerfully than reactively. Prayer, again, can be that highest way of thinking, that highest way of knowing that says, no matter what circumstance I find myself, I'm going to find the key of the most grand way. Not necessarily the most positive, rose-colored glasses way, but the most whole and grand way I can think about this circumstance, to see it from all angles, to see it from all sides. We're not asking to pretend to fake it till you make it or try and see it positive when it isn't. See it as wholly as possible so that you may better understand yourself in that situation. Gandhi also said, prayer is not an old woman's idle amusement. Properly understood and applied, it is the most potent instrument of action. And he proved that in so many ways, didn't he? So how can each of us use prayer in a more constructive way in our lives? My own personal steps for affirmative prayer are pretty simple. They're God is, I am, therefore. God is, I am, therefore. And the God is step really just means, it doesn't have anything to do with talking to a God or asking a God for anything. It just has to do with my ability to establish as grand a consciousness about what life and truth are as possible. I believe that life is miraculous. I believe that all expressions of life are miraculous. I believe in a fundamental wholeness of unity, of truth, of love, of grace. Sometimes I'll have to say God is. Sometimes I have to be a bad poet and be as colorful with myself as possible to incite and inspire that knowing. The I am step is often the hardest for me. It means that if I'm going to recognize a vast greatness in the cosmos, it has to be true of me too. I have to be an expression of that greatness, of that wholeness. And if I'm not okay, nothing else around me is going to be okay either in my relationship to that. So I say I recognize that I am an expression of the miracle of God. I know that the peace and love and grace that God is are at the heart of who I am. And I accept that as so. Therefore, I know I can sleep well tonight. Therefore, I know the world and its problems can get better. Therefore, I know there is grace and love in my upcoming meeting. Therefore, even though I am experiencing separation and anger over an incident with my partner, I know that the truth is that we are one and that love is the fundamental truth that we share with one another. See, it's a big practical deal when you can take the reason why you're living, the meaning of how you want to live and what you want to do, and apply it to even the most measly thing that comes around, because it gets us right back in accordance with our first cause of living, our first cause of why we're in a relationship with someone, our first cause of why we choose to do the work that we do. Prayer isn't some far out way of wishing. It's that practical way of seeing our life clearly in relationship with who we are. So God is, or life is, I am, therefore. You can apply it for yourself. You can know it as the truth of someone that you care about when they're having a difficult time. The demonstrations are the byproduct. They're just the byproduct. But the getting to the truth, that's where the prayer is, and that's where the answer is as well. If you can't come up with the words, guess what? Prayer is all about being quiet. It's all about being still. It's all about silence. There's really no such thing, but it's symbolic of that primordial place where there was only that whole and only that one. So we begin to contemplate it, we begin to open up to it, and we listen. To close with a thought from Thomas Merton, silence is therefore important even in the life of faith and in our deepest encounter with God. The purest faith has to be tested by silence, in which we listen for the unexpected, in which we are open to what we do not yet know, and in which we slowly and gradually prepare for the day when we will reach out to a new level of being with God. May that day you prepare for to live at a new level with God be this day. May it be today. May the divine exist in you in a way that it can shine, that it can express, that it can be in its own prayerfulness. During a baseball game, in a moment of silence, wherever it is, for you are that powerful that you can be a vessel for a greater truth that perhaps has never quite existed before, but can exist through you today. A new understanding of love, a new understanding of healing, a new understanding of devotion, a new understanding of laughter and beauty. You are it. It is up to you. So take that responsibility seriously, but gracefully. And own it. And so it is. Thank you.